There's a feeling you've had your entire life but never named. It happens when you say yes but through discomfort. When you tell yourself you're fine but your chest feels tight. It's not confusion, it's recognition. Your body knows so your mind refuses to see. Your brain is lying to you. Not occasionally. Not when you're stressed. Constantly. Right now. In this exact moment. The part of you reading this and nodding along? That's not the real you. That's the narrator your brain invented to explain decisions it already made without asking. You think you're driving. You're not. You're the passenger pretending the wheel in your hands actually steers. Your brain has convinced you that its lies are your thoughts, that its panic is your intuition, that its outdated survival programs are your personality. Your brain wasn't designed for the life you're living. It was built for a world where danger was physical, immediate, and obvious. Where rejection meant death. Where hypervigilance kept you breathing. So it developed a filing system. Every experience got sorted. Safe or unsafe. Familiar or foreign. Threat or neutral. And once something got filed, the brain stopped questioning it. It became automatic. Reflexive. Invisible. Here's what nobody tells you. That filing happened when you were young. Before language. Before logic. Before you had any ability to contextualize what was happening. Your amygdala, the brain's fear center, was recording everything. The tone of a voice. The feeling of being ignored. The sensation of not mattering. And those recordings? They're still playing. Every single day. When someone raises their voice slightly and your whole body tenses, that's not you being sensitive. That's your amygdala matching present sound to past danger. When you feel anxious before a normal conversation, that's not irrational. That's your nervous system remembering when speaking up led to punishment. The prefrontal cortex, the logical part of your brain, tries to make sense of these reactions. So it invents stories. It tells you you're anxious because you didn't prepare enough. Because you're not good enough. Because something is wrong with you. But that's backwards. The anxiety came first. The story came second. Your brain is a prediction machine. It scans the present for patterns from the past. And when it finds a match, even a loose one, it doesn't wait for confirmation. It fires the same response that worked back then. Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. This is why you can logically know something is safe and still feel terrified. Why you can understand someone means well and still feel defensive. Why you can want connection and simultaneously push it away. Your thinking brain is trying to steer, but your survival brain already hit the brakes. The mechanism is elegant, efficient, and completely disconnected from present reality. Because the brain doesn't care about accuracy. It cares about speed. It would rather have you panic over nothing than miss a real threat. Better to scream at shadows than get eaten in the dark. So it lies, constantly, to keep you safe from dangers that no longer exist. You've probably noticed patterns in your life that don't make sense. You say you want closeness but pick people who keep you at a distance. You claim you value rest but feel guilty every time you stop moving. You insist you're over the past but your body still flinches at certain tones. These aren't contradictions. They're clues. Your brain is running two programs simultaneously. The conscious one that says what you want, and the unconscious one that controls what you do. The unconscious one wins. Every time. Maybe you've felt this. You're about to say something honest and suddenly the words change in your mouth. You meant to set a boundary but heard yourself apologizing instead. You wanted to express anger but smiled through it. In that split second, your brain made a calculation. Honesty equals risk. Safety equals performance. So you performed. And then your conscious mind scrambled to explain why. You told yourself you were being mature, diplomatic, kind. But really, you were being obedient to a rule written in childhood. The rule that said your real feelings were too much, too loud, too inconvenient. This is the invisible autopilot. It doesn't announce itself. It just quietly overrides your intentions and makes you believe the override was your choice. You'll see it in small moments. When someone asks how you are and you say fine even though you're falling apart. When you laugh at a joke that actually hurt. When you minimize your needs before anyone even has a chance to dismiss them. Your brain is preemptively protecting you from rejection by rejecting yourself first. It's showing you a version of reality where you don't need anything, don't feel deeply, don't take up space. Because once upon a time, that version kept you safer. But here's the thing. Your brain doesn't just lie about how you feel. It lies about why you feel it. You think you're anxious because you have an important meeting tomorrow. But the meeting isn't the source. It's the trigger. The source is years old. It's every time your worth felt conditional. Every time approval felt uncertain. Every time you learned that performance equaled safety. Your brain took that lesson and generalized it. Now every evaluation, every moment of visibility, every chance to be seen feels like that original threat. And your nervous system responds accordingly. Heart rate spikes. Thoughts spiral. Sleep disappears. Then your conscious mind looks for explanations. It sees the meeting. It connects the dots. And it tells you the story. You're anxious because you're not prepared. Because you might fail. Because you're not good enough. But that story is backwards. You're not anxious because of the meeting. The meeting activated pre-existing anxiety that's been waiting for a reason to surface. This is what makes the brain's lies so convincing. They always come with evidence. They point to real things in your environment and say, "See? This is why." And you believe it. Because the alternative is harder to accept. The alternative is that your reactions aren't about now. They're echoes. Reverberations of moments you don't even consciously remember but your body never forgot. You don't trust easily? That's not a personality flaw. That's a nervous system that learned trust was expensive. You struggle with rest? That's not laziness. That's a brain that equated stillness with vulnerability. You feel guilty setting boundaries? That's not weakness. That's programming from an environment where your needs were treated as burdens. The brain doesn't want you to know this. Because if you knew, you'd start questioning its authority. You'd realize that the voice telling you you're not enough isn't wisdom. It's interference. Static from a past broadcast still playing on loop. And once you hear the static for what it is, everything changes. Not immediately, not easily, but inevitably. Because awareness is the crack in the autopilot. The moment you catch the lie in real time, you create space. Space between stimulus and response. Space between feeling and story. Space between the old program and new possibility. Here's the paradox nobody prepares you for. Your brain's lies aren't the enemy. They're proof that some part of you survived when survival wasn't guaranteed. Every overreaction is a scar. Every irrational fear is a memorial. Every self-sabotaging pattern is a strategy that once worked so well you never stopped using it. Your brain isn't broken. It's loyal. Fiercely, stubbornly loyal to the version of you that needed protection when you were too young to protect yourself. That hypervigilance you hate? It kept you emotionally safe when your environment was unpredictable. That people-pleasing you resent? It bought you conditional peace when conflict felt dangerous. That emotional numbness you fight? It shielded you from feelings too big for a child to process. The brain doesn't retire successful strategies. It archives them, ready to deploy the second something in the present rhymes with something in the past. This is why insight alone doesn't create change. You can understand exactly why you do something and still do it. You can map the pattern, name the trigger, trace it back to origin, and still watch yourself repeat it. Because understanding happens in the prefrontal cortex, but the pattern lives in the amygdala. And the amygdala doesn't speak language. It speaks sensation. It doesn't respond to logic. It responds to safety. So when you try to think your way out of an emotional pattern, you're using the wrong tool. You're trying to reason with a part of your brain that doesn't reason. It only reacts. This is the trap. You think healing means getting rid of the lies, deleting the old programs, becoming a new person. But that's not how the brain works. You can't erase the code. You can only write new code alongside it. The old patterns don't disappear. They just stop being the only option. And that shift doesn't happen through force. It happens through something quieter. Repetition, consistency, proof. Your nervous system needs evidence that the new way is safer than the old way. Not once, not twice, hundreds of times. This is why healing feels so slow. Why you can know better and still not do better. Why growth comes in waves instead of straight lines. You're not failing. You're rewiring. And rewiring takes time. The brain resists change the way the body resists a transplant. It sees the new pattern as foreign, potentially dangerous. So it defaults back to what's familiar, even when familiar hurts. But here's what the brain doesn't tell you. Every time you choose differently, even when it feels uncomfortable, you're sending a signal. A signal that says the old threat is gone, that the old rules don't apply, that survival no longer requires sacrifice. And slowly, grudgingly, the nervous system starts to believe it. The lies don't stop all at once. They soften. They lose urgency. They become suggestions instead of commands. And in that softening, you find something you forgot existed. Choice. Not the illusion of choice the brain gives you within its narrow parameters, but real choice. The ability to feel fear and not obey it. To notice an old pattern and not follow it. To hear the lie and choose truth anyway. This is freedom. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of agency. The brain will keep lying. That's its job. But you don't have to keep believing it. So how do you catch a lie your brain has been telling for decades? How do you spot something that's been invisible your entire life? You start with the body, not the mind. The body. Because the body doesn't lie. It reacts before your brain can spin the story, before the explanation, before the justification. Your body knows the truth half a second before your mind buries it. So you learn to notice. Not analyze. Just notice. When someone says something and your chest tightens. When a certain tone makes your shoulders rise. When a specific topic makes you want to leave the room. Don't ask why yet. Just notice the sensation. That sensation is the brain's lie detector. It's the part of you that hasn't been trained to perform. The part that responds honestly before the override kicks in. The practice is simple. Uncomfortable, but simple. When you feel a reaction, pause. Not to fix it. Not to explain it. Just to name it. Out loud if possible. To yourself if not. My chest is tight. My breathing is shallow. My jaw is clenched. That's it. No story. No interpretation. Just the physical truth. This disrupts the autopilot. Because the autopilot works in silence. It thrives when you're not paying attention. But the moment you observe it, something shifts. You create a gap. And in that gap, the old pattern loses some of its power. You won't always choose differently. Not at first. Maybe not for a long time. But you'll start to see the choice. And seeing it is half the work. The second half is repetition. New neural pathways don't form from understanding. They form from practice. From doing the new thing enough times that it stops feeling foreign. So you practice small contradictions. Moments where you choose against the old program. You say no without explaining. You express a need without apologizing. You let silence sit without filling it. You feel anger without performing calm. Each time, your nervous system panics slightly, because these actions violate old safety rules. But each time you survive the panic without catastrophe, the brain updates its prediction model. It learns that the consequences it feared don't materialize. That honesty doesn't equal abandonment. That boundaries don't equal rejection. This is how you debug the system. Not by force, by proof. You also need witnesses. Not to validate your experience, but to interrupt the brain's tendency to gaslight you after the fact. When you notice a pattern, name it to someone safe. Out loud. In detail. Because the brain is brilliant at convincing you later that what you noticed wasn't real. That you overreacted. That you're being dramatic. But if you've already said it to another person, the brain can't erase it as easily. Another tool. the curious observer. When you catch yourself in an old pattern, instead of shame, try curiosity. Instead of "why did I do that again?" try "what was my brain trying to protect me from?" This shifts the frame from failure to information, from judgment to investigation. And investigation keeps the prefrontal cortex engaged instead of letting the amygdala take full control. You might also notice that certain environments make the lies louder. Certain people, certain situations. These aren't weaknesses, they're data points. They show you where the old code still runs strongest. You don't have to avoid those triggers forever, but you might need to limit exposure while you're building new pathways, while you're teaching your nervous system that safety doesn't require performance. And one more thing, progress won't feel like progress. Not at first. It'll feel like discomfort, like going against instinct, like doing everything wrong. That's how you know it's working. Because if healing felt natural, you'd have done it already. If the new pattern felt comfortable, it wouldn't be new. Growth lives in the space between what feels familiar and what's actually good for you. So when you choose honesty and your body floods with anxiety, that's not a sign you're failing. That's a sign you're interrupting code written when honesty felt dangerous. When you set a boundary and feel guilty, that's not proof the boundary was wrong. That's an old program objecting to its own obsolescence. When you rest and feel restless, that's not laziness resisting productivity. That's a nervous system learning that stillness doesn't equal vulnerability. The discomfort is the work, not punishment for doing it wrong, but evidence you're doing it right. You were never supposed to carry this alone. The brain's lies, the weight of outdated protection, the exhaustion of living split between who you are and who you learn to be. But here's what changes everything. You're not trying to become a different person. You're trying to become the person you were before the lies started. Before your nervous system learned that safety required silence. Before your brain decided that love was conditional. Before survival taught you to mistrust your own instincts. That person is still there. Underneath the code. Underneath the patterns. Underneath every defense mechanism and every autopilot response. Healing isn't building something new. It's excavation. It's removing layer after layer of protection until you remember what it feels like to exist without armor. And that process is messy, non-linear, full of setbacks that look like failure but are actually information. Full of moments where the old program runs perfectly and you don't catch it until later. Full of days where you understand everything and still choose the familiar hurt over the unfamiliar unknown. That's not regression. That's being human while rewiring. The brain will keep lying. For a while, maybe forever in small ways, but the lies will lose their grip. Slowly, quietly, until one day you notice a thought and realize it doesn't sound like you anymore. It sounds like the old code, and instead of believing it, you observe it. And then you choose something else. That moment, that small, ordinary moment, that's freedom. Not the absence of fear, not the end of patterns, not the permanent deletion of old programming, but the presence of choice. The ability to hear your brain's prediction and say, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I'm okay now." You don't owe your past self endless obedience. You don't owe your survival strategies eternal loyalty. You were young when those programs got written. You didn't have options. You adapted because adaptation was the only tool you had. But you're not young anymore. And you have more tools now. Awareness, language, the ability to pause between trigger and response, the capacity to choose discomfort in service of truth instead of comfort in service of lies. This is the quiet revolution.